We exist in an era of unprecedented connection, yet paradoxically we've never felt more alone. Every platform beckons us to share, to engage, to broadcast our existence to the world. The digital symphony never stops, notifications ping, messages flow, and the endless scroll becomes our daily meditation. Yet beneath this cacophony of constant contact, something profound is stirring. More people than ever are discovering an unexpected truth. Sometimes the most nourishing thing you can do is step away from it all. If you've ever felt that magnetic pull towards silence, the deep exhale at the thought of an empty calendar, you're experiencing something ancient and essential. This isn't antisocial behavior or emotional withdrawal. It's your psyche requesting what it desperately needs to function at its highest level. Picture this: you're invited to another gathering, another networking event, another social obligation. Instead of excitement, you feel something else, a gentle but persistent resistance. Your body seems to say, not today, today I need something different. That something is solitude, and it's calling for reasons far deeper than simple exhaustion. In our hyper-connected world, choosing solitude has become a quiet form of rebellion. While everyone else is optimizing their social media presence and maximizing their networking opportunities, you're drawn to something that can't be photographed or shared. The profound experience of being completely alone with yourself. This desire often emerges during life's most overwhelming moments, when your calendar looks like a game of Tetris, when every conversation feels like work, when you find yourself longing not for more people, but for more space. That's your nervous system crying out for balance. What's happening in your brain when you crave solitude is nothing short of remarkable. Neuroscientists have discovered that when we're alone, and not actively engaged in tasks, our brains activate what's called the default mode network. This isn't downtime. It's when your mind does some of its most crucial work. Think of your brain as a master archivist. Throughout the day, experiences pile up like unsorted documents. Social interactions, emotional reactions, sensory input, decisions made and unmade. All of it accumulates in temporary storage. Solitude is when the archivist finally gets to work, finding experiences where they belong, making connections between disparate memories, and creating the narratives that help you understand your life. This is why breakthrough moments often arrive in the shower, during long walks, or in those quiet minutes before sleep. Your conscious mind steps aside, and your deeper intelligence takes over. It's not magic, it's your brain's natural processing system, finally getting the quiet it needs to function. Research from Harvard Business School reveals that people who spend regular time in solitude show increased creativity, enhanced self-awareness, and improved emotional regulation. They're not escaping reality, they're developing a more sophisticated relationship with it. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of solitude is its brutal honesty. In company, we naturally adjust our presentation, softening certain edges, highlighting preferred qualities, performing versions of ourselves that feel socially appropriate. This isn't deception, it's the normal dance of human interaction. But solitude strips away all performance. It's just you, facing yourself without audience or agenda. This can feel uncomfortable, even frightening, because solitude reveals not just who you are when no one is watching, but who you're becoming when no one else is influencing the process. Many people avoid solitude precisely because of this mirror effect. When the distractions fade, unprocessed emotions surface, doubts emerge. Questions that have been buried under busyness demand attention. It's easier to reach for the phone, turn on music, call a friend, anything to avoid the intensity of your own unfiltered presence. Yet this discomfort signals exactly why solitude is so valuable. Those emotions and questions aren't problems to be avoided, they're information to be integrated. They're the raw material of growth, the compost from which wisdom grows. Here lies one of the most important distinctions in human experience, the difference between solitude and loneliness. Though they may look identical from the outside, a person alone, they feel entirely different from within. Loneliness is a hunger, an ache for connection that feels like emptiness. It's involuntary, often painful, and carries the weight of isolation. When you're lonely, being alone feels like punishment, like evidence of social failure or personal unworthiness. Solitude, by contrast, is a choice. A conscious decision to step into your own company, not because you're avoiding others, but because you're drawn toward yourself. It doesn't feel empty. It feels full, rich, complete. When you're in true solitude, you're not waiting for someone else to arrive and make things better. You've arrived for yourself. This distinction matters because it reveals solitude's true nature. It's not about rejecting human connection, but about developing the most fundamental connection of all, the one with yourself. When you can be genuinely comfortable in your own presence, every other relationship in your life transforms. Throughout human history, the greatest thinkers, artists, and spiritual teachers have understood solitude's transformative power. They didn't stumble upon it accidentally. They sought it deliberately, recognizing it as essential fuel for their deepest work. Consider Henry David Thoreau, who spent 2 years alone at Walden Pond, not as an escape from society but as an experiment in essential living. His solitude produced insights that continue to influence how we think about nature, simplicity, and authentic existence more than a century later. Or Virginia Woolf, who wrote about needing a room of one's own, not just physical space but psychological territory, where the mind could roam freely without external interference. Her greatest literary breakthroughs emerged from this protected solitude. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spent years in relative isolation, walking the mountains of Switzerland, developing ideas that would reshape Western thought. He didn't see his solitude as deprivation, but as concentration, a way to distill life down to its essential elements. Even in our contemporary era, many of the most innovative minds deliberately cultivate solitude. Bill Gates famously takes think weeks twice a year, isolating himself with books and ideas. Steve Jobs credited his breakthrough insights to long, solitary walks. These aren't eccentric habits, they're sophisticated strategies for accessing deeper levels of thinking and creativity. Here's where solitude reveals its deepest paradox. The more comfortable you become with being alone, the more present you become with others. When you no longer need other people to fill your emptiness or validate your existence, you can meet them from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. Think of relationships like dance. When both partners are balanced and centered in themselves, they can move together with grace and fluidity. But when one person is off balance, leaning too heavily on their partner for support, the whole dance becomes awkward and strained. Regular solitude helps you find your own balance, your own center. You learn to generate your own emotional stability, your own sense of purpose, your own inner dialogue. This doesn't make you less social, it makes you more genuinely available for authentic connection. People who practice solitude often report that their relationships become deeper and more satisfying. They're less reactive, less dependent, less likely to use others as emotional crutches. Instead, they can offer the gift of their full presence, untainted by hidden agendas or unmet needs. If solitude offers so many benefits, why do so many people resist it? The answer lies in what we might call the fear of the void, the anxiety that if we stop moving, stop achieving, stop interacting, we might discover there's nothing substantial beneath all the activity. This fear is particularly acute in achievement-oriented cultures, where worth is measured by productivity and visibility. Taking time to simply be, without producing anything tangible, can feel like laziness or self-indulgence. We've been trained to believe that if we're not moving forward, we must be falling behind. But this fear reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about how growth actually works. A tree doesn't grow by constantly stretching toward the sky. It grows by sending roots deep into the earth, by drawing nutrients through invisible underground networks, by resting during winter seasons. The visible growth is supported by vast amounts of invisible preparation. Human development follows similar patterns. The insights that change your life often arrive, not during peak activity, but during periods of apparent inactivity. Those moments when you're simply sitting, walking, or letting your mind wander without agenda. Not all solitude is created equal. Scrolling social media while physically alone doesn't provide the benefits we've been discussing. Neither does binge-watching shows or engaging in other forms of passive consumption. True solitude requires presence, the willingness to be with yourself without distraction. Productive solitude has certain characteristics. First, it's intentional. You're not alone because circumstances forced it upon you, but because you chose it as a valuable use of your time. Second, it's undirected. You're not trying to solve specific problems or achieve particular outcomes. You're creating space for whatever needs to emerge. Third, it involves some form of reflection, whether through journaling, meditation, walking in nature, or simply sitting quietly. The key is reducing external input so your internal wisdom can surface. This might feel counterintuitive in our information-saturated age, but sometimes the most important insights come not from consuming more content, but from finally processing what you already know. Many people find that their best solitude happens in natural settings. There's something about being surrounded by trees, water, or sky that makes aloneness feel less like isolation and more like communion, connection with something larger than yourself. Evolutionary biologists suggest we're wired to find restoration in natural environments, which may explain why a solitary walk in the woods feels so different from sitting alone in a crowded city. Just as your lungs follow a rhythm of expansion and contraction, your social life benefits from a similar pattern. Periods of engagement and connection naturally call for periods of withdrawal and reflection. This isn't inconsistency, it's wisdom. Think of social interaction as expansion. You're opening yourself to others' energy, ideas, needs, and emotions. This can be enriching, but it's also stimulating in ways that require processing. Solitude is the contraction phase, the time when you integrate these experiences, sort through the emotions they stirred up, and reconnect with your own center. Without this rhythm, you risk becoming overwhelmed by external input. You might find yourself agreeing to things that don't align with your values, taking on others' emotions as your own, or losing touch with your authentic preferences and desires. Regular solitude helps maintain healthy boundaries, not walls that keep others out, but membranes that allow you to remain open while staying centered in yourself. Perhaps nowhere is solitude more essential than in creative work. Every creative act requires two phases, gathering and distilling. You gather raw materials, experiences, observations, emotions, ideas, through interaction with the world. But distillation, the process of transforming these materials into something new and meaningful, happens in solitude. Writers know this instinctively. You might research a topic through interviews and observations, but the actual writing happens alone, in dialogue with your own thoughts and imagination. Artists might draw inspiration from the world around them, but the canvas demands solitary attention. Musicians collaborate and perform, but composition often requires intimate conversation between the creator and their craft. This pattern extends beyond traditional arts. Innovation in any field requires periods of solitary reflection, where you can make connections that might not be obvious in group settings. Some of the most breakthrough ideas in science, technology, and business have emerged from individuals who gave themselves permission to think deeply without external pressure or influence. One of the most challenging aspects of claiming solitude is learning to disappoint others gracefully. In a culture that celebrates availability and responsiveness, choosing to be unreachable can feel almost rebellious. But this is where solitude becomes an act of self-respect, the recognition that your inner life deserves protection and cultivation. This doesn't mean becoming antisocial or breaking commitments. It means being selective about your commitments in the first place, building buffer time into your schedule, and communicating clearly about your need for space. It means saying "I need some time to think about that," instead of immediately responding to every request for your attention. Some people will understand this need instinctively. They'll respect your boundaries and may even express envy at your ability to claim solitude. Others might interpret it as rejection or unavailability. Learning to navigate these different responses is part of developing what we might call solitude literacy, the ability to honor your need for alone time while maintaining healthy relationships with others. Modern technology presents unique challenges to anyone seeking genuine solitude. Our devices are designed to capture and hold attention, to make us feel connected even when we're physically alone. Notifications, social media, streaming services, and endless content create the illusion of company, while actually preventing the deep rest that true solitude provides. Meaningful solitude often requires intentional disconnection from digital stimulation. This might mean designated phone-free hours, regular digital detoxes, or creating physical spaces in your home where technology isn't welcome. The goal isn't to reject technology entirely, but to use it consciously rather than letting it use you. Many people discover that their most profound moments of solitude happen when they've stepped away from screens entirely, during walks without podcasts, meals without scrolling, quiet mornings before checking messages. These moments of genuine disconnection allow for the kind of deep presence that digital connection, however sophisticated, cannot provide. Just as nature has seasons, so does your need for solitude. There are times when you naturally crave more social engagement, periods of expansion, creativity, or celebration when connecting with others feels essential. And there are seasons when you're drawn inward, times of transition, loss, or deep learning, when solitude becomes your most important companion. Learning to recognize and honor these seasons without judgment is a crucial life skill. Sometimes you'll need weeks or months of regular solitude to process major life changes. Other times, brief daily moments of quiet will be sufficient. The key is paying attention to what your system actually needs, rather than forcing yourself to conform to external expectations about how social you should be. This seasonal approach helps normalize the desire for solitude. Instead of seeing it as a character flaw or social failure, you can recognize it as natural rhythm, as essential to your well-being, as sleep, exercise, or nutritious food. When you develop a healthy relationship with solitude, the effects ripple outward in ways that might surprise you. You become less reactive in difficult conversations because you've learned to sit with uncomfortable emotions in private. You make better decisions because you've given yourself space to hear your own wisdom. You become more creative because you've protected the mental space where new ideas can emerge. Your relationships improve, not despite your solitude, but because of it. When you're not desperately seeking validation or distraction from others, you can offer more authentic presence. When you've processed your own emotions privately, you're less likely to project them onto innocent bystanders. When you've reconnected with your own values and desires through reflection, you can engage with others more honestly. Perhaps most importantly, regular solitude builds what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to sit with difficult experiences without immediately seeking escape or relief. This capacity serves you not just in alone time, but in every challenging situation life presents. When you know you can handle your own company at its worst, you develop confidence that extends into every other area of your life. So here's the invitation that solitude extends: to trust that stepping back doesn't mean giving up, that silence doesn't mean emptiness, that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It's an invitation to discover what emerges when you're not performing, not producing, not responding to anyone else's needs or expectations. This might mean waking up 15 minutes earlier to sit quietly with your coffee before the day's demands begin. It might mean taking walks without headphones, letting your mind wander where it will. It might mean scheduling regular retreats from social media, or claiming one evening a week for yourself alone. The specific practices matter less than the underlying commitment, the decision to honor your need for solitude as a legitimate and valuable part of your life, to see it not as selfish indulgence but as essential maintenance, the way you tend to the relationship that will outlast all others, the one with yourself. In a world that profits from your constant availability and attention, choosing solitude becomes a radical act of self-care. It's a declaration that your inner life matters, that your thoughts and feelings deserve space to unfold without external interference, that you are worth spending time with even when no one else is around. The desire to be alone isn't a bug in your social programming. It's a feature. It's your psyche's sophisticated guidance system, pointing you toward exactly what you need to grow, to heal, to create, to become more fully yourself. When you honor this desire, you're not withdrawing from life. You're preparing to engage with it more deeply than ever before. So listen to that quiet voice that calls you towards stillness. Follow it into the sanctuary of your own presence. Trust that in the space between breaths, between thoughts, between the endless demands of connection, lies everything you've been searching for in the noise. The most important conversations you'll ever have might just be the ones that happen when no one else is in the room.